Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our annual Feast Day lecture on Saint Raphael of Brooklyn. Of course, he is our patron saint of our school, and he definitely has much to teach us about with his life, his legacy, and his lessons. So we do this yearly event in honor of our patron saint during the month, either that is celebrated in the Antiochian Orthodox Church, which is the month of November, or we sometimes also do it in February. So we kind of do either or of his feast day. And so today we have with us Mr. Richard Barrett. And so I have to tell the story, Richard. I don't
Okay.
know if you remember this story,
Well, we'll find out in a moment.
but I have to tell the story. Way back when I was at Holy Cross with Father Dionysios, I worked in the library. And so here I am
I
putting
remember the
away
story.
books and getting everything together. And I come across this desk that has so many books. So many books. And of course, because I'm so zealous, I start putting the books away. And here comes this nice young gentleman, and he says, "Excuse me, those are my books." And I said, "Well, I didn't know these were your books. I'm so sorry." And of course, at the time, Richard was a fellow at Holy Cross. He had come, and of course, we broke out in conversation because I'm from Indiana. You also, were hailing from there, and we became fast friends.
We
So
did indeed. And we were working on similar things.
yes, yes. So then I knew this Carol was Richard's, and I was not to touch the books. And if I wanted to borrow one, I didn't. I just went and sat there and used it. Ah, good times, good
Indeed.
times.
Indeed.
So I am so pleased, of course, to have you, because when we think about our Orthodox world, it is so small in comparison to everything. There's always just a few degrees of separation. I always say that. So for those of you that just walked in, welcome, welcome. Hello from North Carolina. I want to introduce you all to Richard Barrett. He is the Director of Publications for Capella Romana, as well as Director of Music and Protopsatis of the Dormition of the Virgin Mary Greek Orthodox Church in Somerville, Massachusetts, and the Artistic Director of the St. John of Damascus Society. As a performer, he sings regularly with the ensembles Capella Romana, Psaltikon, the St. Tikhon Choir, the Patriarch Tikhon Russian American Music Institute Choir, the Archdiocesan Byzantine Choir of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, and others. He has served as an invited speaker, clinician, and singer at Orthodox parishes and sacred music conferences throughout the United States, and he has published scholarly articles in Greek Orthodox Theological Review, Journal of Early Christianity, and Studia Patristica. I got it. And he also writes regularly on musical topics for Orthodox Arts Journal and other publications. He holds a Master of Arts in Ancient History with minors in Medieval History and Ancient Studies, as well as a Bachelor of Music in Vocal Performance from Indiana University. So welcome, Richard. We are so glad you are here. And your topic, I must say, is quite interesting. Your topic, which is, and I know that the title was more than this, but the American identity for Orthodox Christians, Saint Raphael, Brooklyn, and American Identity for Orthodox Christians. And it so intrigued me, that title. So I am looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us about St. Raphael, his life, legacies, and lessons. Those of you that are attending, if you would like to ask any questions, you're more than welcome to do so in the chat box, or you can actually use the Q&A box that's located at the very bottom. And we will be answering those questions at the end. So with that, Richard.
Thank you so much, Presbytera. It's wonderful to be here. Presbytera Maria was kind enough to invite me to offer a reflection on St. Raphael of Brooklyn in relation to my own personal journey, and I'm truly grateful for the opportunity. I believe that St. Raphael's life and example, as the Orthodox Church remembers and celebrates him, has broad relevance to Orthodox Christians in America today, for me in particular. And I keep returning to words he said about himself. I am an Arab by birth, a Greek by primary education, an American by residence, a Russian at heart, and a Slav in soul. That is, we might say, a mouthful. Since the invitation was to relate St. Raphael to my own journey, I immediately consider some of the categories, well, really identities that I apply to myself. I'm American and I'm Orthodox, but I can absolutely unpack that more. For example, I'm an Anglo-Danish Finn by heritage. I'm an Alaskan by birth, a Pacific Northwesterner by upbringing, a Midwesterner by place of higher education, and a New Englander by residence. In terms of church, I'm a Scandinavian Protestant by infant baptism, an American prosperity gospel evangelical by upbringing, an atheist by what you might call my father's minority vote, an Anglican by late teenage formation, and Orthodox by adult affirmation. And even that last part can be expounded upon. I'm Russian Orthodox by initial exposure, Antiochian by chrismation, and Greek by choice. As far as what I am in soul goes, well, I'd say I'm Constantinopolitan in soul, contrasted with, for better or for worse, Viking by weather preference. And as English as they come by patron saint, St. Richard of Wessex. Thankfully, there's precedent for at least some of that. From the 10th through the 14th centuries, Viking mercenaries served in Constantinople as personal bodyguards for the Roman emperors, remembered by history as the Varangian Guard. Maybe I'm descended from one of those, who knows? Anyway, all of these identities are real, quote unquote, insofar as they all contribute substantially to my sense of self. And I am obliged to remind myself of St. Paul's words in the Epistle to the Galatians: there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you all are one in Christ Jesus. And again in Colossians, you have put off the old man with his deeds and have put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave nor free, but Christ is all and in all. But given all that, what does St. Raphael mean in talking about himself that way? Arab by birth, Greek by primary education, American by residence, Russian at heart, and Slav in soul. What does his understanding of himself mean for me and for other Orthodox Christians in America who may also try to make sense, so to speak, of being everything from everywhere all at once? Well, first, St. Raphael said, I am an Arab by birth. St. Raphael was born on or around the Synaxis of the Archangels, November 8th, 1860, in the city of Beirut in what is today the state of Lebanon. His parents were from Damascus in Ottoman-ruled Syria. They had come to Beirut along with thousands of other Orthodox Christians to escape a bloody civil war that had already claimed the life of their parish priest, now Saint Joseph of Damascus. Now, we might hear those place names now, today, and think, okay, that's obviously Arab by birth. Except that the territory at the time was controlled by the Ottoman Turks, not Arabs as such as today. If he were just referring to birthplace, he could have easily said Syrian by birth. To be Arab by birth is, I think, making a broader statement of heritage. Indigenous might be the word we'd use today. His parents were not part of the ruling Ottoman structure, nor were they part of the Greek ecclesiastical hierarchy. To be Arab would have been to speak Arabic as their first language. As Arab Christians, they would have had to coexist with an Arab Muslim majority, as well as another Arab religious minority, the Druze. This coexistence was not always peaceful, as the Civil War demonstrated. Nonetheless, by calling himself Arab by birth, St. Raphael is deliberately placing himself, it seems, in a context that includes a significant degree of religious pluralism, as well as these other layers of heritage and cultural identity. For St. Raphael to call himself Greek by primary education engages a very old question. What does it mean to be Greek? Who may choose to label themselves as Greek without straining credulity or even appropriating the name, as we might put it today? That's a puzzle that goes back at least as far as the 4th century BC, when an Athenian orator named Isocrates offered the following solution, quote, "And our city, Athens, has so far exceeded other men concerning thinking and speaking, so that our city's students have become teachers of others. And our city has made the name of the Greeks appear to be no longer that of a race, but of intellect. And those sharing our education are called Greeks, rather than those sharing a common origin," unquote. And this has become a rallying cry for Greek education being a door to the prestigious Hellenic identity that anybody may enter over the centuries. The inscription over the renowned Gennadius Library in Athens reads, "Ellines kalunde itis poedevseos tis imeteras metechondes." The ones sharing in our education are called Greeks. How does this help us with St. Raphael being, quote, Greek by primary education? Well, the civil war in Damascus had subsided by the time St. Raphael was born, and the Ottoman government attempted to rebuild the Christian quarter of the city. St. Raphael's family returned to Damascus, and his primary education was in the city's parochial schools, as well as the Damascus Patriarchal School for his initial theological study. The Orthodox Church in Damascus was officially known as the Greek Orthodox Church, with the bishops being largely of Greek origin, and the liturgical language was Greek. The Damascus schools were thus Greek-run, and St. Raphael was fluent enough in Greek that when he petitioned to continue his theological education, he was sent in 1875 to the Halki Theological School in the Prince's Islands, just outside of Constantinople, since, ironically, from a present-day perspective, the Balamand Theological School in Lebanon, the historic local option in the Levant, was closed. This education brought him to the attention of Patriarch Gerasimos of Antioch, whom St. Raphael, by then a deacon, subsequently accompanied on pastoral visits to parishes, and in whose place he would preach homilies. So that seems to be what Greek by primary education is all catching. And then that brings us to Russian at heart and Slav in soul. Wanting to continue his theological education, in 1888, St. Raphael asked the Patriarch of Antioch to send him to the Theological Academy of Kiev, Ukraine, then part of the Russian Empire. The Russians ordained him to the priesthood in 1889, and he served as the priest for the Patriarchate of Antioch's satellite chapel in Moscow. St. Raphael eventually was obliged to cut ties with the Greek Orthodox Church in Antioch. Now, this is an odd turn at first glance. He is remembered not just as Greek by primary education in his own words, but by other writers as one who truly loved Hellenism and who was a staunch advocate for Greek language, education, and culture. Why then did St. Raphael have to leave the Greeks? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Orthodox bishops in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and throughout that part of the world were Greek. And the political and ecclesiastical reality of the time meant that indigenous Arab Orthodox Christians, Arabs by birth, like St. Raphael, were excluded from the episcopate. St. Raphael saw this as a profoundly unchristian and unorthodox state of affairs, and he wrote articles under a pseudonym seeking to inform people and to try to change things. And then at some point, he refused to commemorate the Greek Cypriot Patriarch of Antioch. For a time, he was suspended from the priesthood, and when the suspension was lifted, the Russians accepted his transfer, and then he taught at the Theological Academy of Kazan. So He wound up being in Russia for all of 7 years, 1888 to 1895, which isn't all that long to decide that one is, quote unquote, Russian at heart and Slav in soul. But clearly, St. Raphael connected with something there. Perhaps he felt accepted in Russia in a way that he could not in Damascus or at Halki. Maybe he appreciated being someplace where his faith and religious identity did not make him a minority. The distinction between Russian and Slav is interesting. He's associating himself specifically with the Russian state, and all of the Slavic peoples generally, Bulgarians, Serbs, Ukrainians. And since St. Raphael completed his theological education in Kiev, Ukraine, I expect he saw and understood a fair amount of that big picture. And it's a distinction that has real impact and resonance with world affairs in our own day. Plus, in America, he served under and later with Russian bishops. All of this is to say, whereas Russian here is a particular political as well as ecclesiastical identity, Slav in soul bookends Arab by birth as a broader claim and affirmation of heritage. And this pairing is also marked by the fact that when he was consecrated as a bishop, he made his confession of faith in both Arabic and Russian. Which brings us finally to American by residence. There is an extent to which St. Raphael is burying the lead here, since he ultimately lived in America longer than any other single place. He was in Damascus for 19 years, Halki for 7, Russia for 7, and then America for the remaining 20 years of his life. In 1895, he was initially called to be the parish priest for St. Nicholas Syrian Orthodox Church in New York, and he also traveled throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico, helping to solidify other communities of Arab Orthodox Christians. In 1905, he was the first Orthodox bishop to be ordained in North America, in ironic contrast to his being ineligible for the office in the very land in which he was born. Among other things, he founded some 30 parishes, laying the foundations of the Antiochian Orthodox Archdiocese as we know it today, helped to establish the first Orthodox monastery in North America, St. Tikhon's, translated service books into Arabic, did what he could to make provision for English language worship, and started an Orthodox magazine, The Word, that is still published today. I'm not sure residence really covers all of what American meant for St. Raphael. He didn't just live here. In America, he synthesized all the layers of his identity, and he was able to bring them to a unity and completion that, above all, served Christ and his church. Now, 20 minutes isn't enough for a truly substantial dive into what St. Raphael signifies for us today, not by half, but in my remaining time, I can offer some personal reflections on what his story signifies for me. One way to read St. Raphael's story is in negatives. Each statement of what he is also states what he is not. For example, in saying he is Arab by birth, he is saying that he is not Ottoman or Greek by birth. In saying that he is American by residence, he's affirming that he does not live abroad, that he's making it clear that he's not just on loan here until he gets something else, which almost happened a couple of times, and he made sure that he stayed in the States, things like that. And there might be some real value in looking at it from the point of view of negatives in some situations. However, I don't know that that's helpful in my case. In the list of identities I rattled off at the start of my talk, the negative almost all of them affirm is, I'm not from an Orthodox background. There was a time when I was not Orthodox. That's true, of course, and it's something I often have to keep in mind, but I don't know how relevant it is to who and what I am now. So what if we look at it as a series of positives? I am Arab by birth, which gives me a rich cultural point of reference, the language and history of my people, and a particular sense of Orthodox Christian identity. I am Greek by primary education, which means I participate in a venerable tradition of intellectual and spiritual formation going back centuries. I am Russian at heart and Slav in soul, which means I have firsthand experience of an Orthodox Christian culture that unites a diversity of people and is not restricted by the state, with all the good and not so good that entails. And I am American by residence, which means that I may put all of that to use for the building up of Christ's church in new territory. That's better, I think. As an Anglo-Nordic American, I have cherished roots that do not detract from my experience as an Orthodox Christian. In fact, they enrich it. One concrete way, there is a wealth of shared saints that present-day Orthodox Christians are only now beginning to realize are praying for us, along with saints such as Nicholas, Helen, Dimitrios, and of course, Raphael. For example, Saint Olaf of Norway, Saint Theodore the Varangian, Saint Fritheswythe of Oxford, my own patron saint, Saint Richard of Wessex, the newly glorified Saint Matushka Olga of Alaska. These are examples of Christian holiness that may not be from Ephesus or Constantinople or Jerusalem, but they offer prayers on our behalf at the throne of God all the same, and we can learn their stories and commemorate them. My time as an Anglican means that I understand the value and function of beautiful worship and the importance of treating church music as a skill for ministry that is to be learned and practiced. No, I haven't had the sound of Byzantine chant in my ears since I was a fetus, but I've been able to apply the musical instincts I developed and the training I received as an Anglican to Byzantine music regardless, which has made it easier to learn, not harder. And as a last point along these lines, I might say that my exposure to the Slavic and Antiochian Orthodox churches before finding a home with the Greeks has given me a sense of Orthodox Christianity that makes room for a diversity of backgrounds, languages, and particularities of practice. I can respect and embrace the specifics of Ukrainians or Romanians or Antiochians and how they sing and pray and feast and fast, even at the same time as it differs from how we in my Greek church might sing, pray, feast, and fast. To conclude for now, what I'll offer is that St. Raphael's words paint, at least for me, an icon of Orthodox Christianity that is big enough for everybody. For the Greek, Arab, Slav, Black, Latino, Latina, First Nation, Asian, Anglo, Scandinavian, what have you. All of these identities mean something specific, but specificity can be inclusive rather than exclusive, additive rather than zero-sum. It's not being everything from everywhere all at once, so much as being all things to all people, as St. Paul says, and all people being made one in Christ. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. My goodness. If you have questions, feel free in the chat box or in the Q&A. Please feel free to put in your questions. Wow, you know, as you were speaking and taking what Saint Raphael discussed about himself and applying it to you, I love that you said that who we are isn't necessarily one pinpointed spot in our journey, but rather a compilation of all of it.
Yeah.
And it really makes me kind of think about ethnicity, right? Or birth area or where you live, etc., as again, almost like a mosaic that finishes who we are as a person.
Yeah.
So can you speak just a little bit more on you mentioned something right towards the end, inclusivity versus exclusivity.
Yeah. So what I mean by that, let me give you an example that's kind of, that winds up being very specific to me in my case, but we'll see if it illustrates something. So as I mentioned a couple times, my patron saint is Saint Richard of Wessex, a saint who, you know, you can go to the saints calendar on goarch.org. You'll see him there, February 7th. but in the 20 years that I've been in Orthodox churches, there's never been a service for him.
Mm.
There's the so it's like I haven't been able to celebrate name day services the way a Constantine or a Helen or whomever might be able to, or Raphael. So a few years ago, took it upon myself to write one. I wrote an office for my own patron saint, and said to my priest, if I bring this to you, can we do an all-night vigil? And he said, absolutely. And so I wrote an English language vigil office, all of Vespers, all of Orthros, and then the variables for Divine Liturgy. And I wrote it to be singable by somebody who would be conversant not only in Byzantine music, but that it could also be used for the musical idioms of other churches, Kievan Common Chant, whatever, and to be sort of, backwards compatible as much as possible across musical repertories. And we did, so we did Artoclassia for the Vesper part of the Vigil, of course. But I also got to thinking, okay, so we do this, what if for an English saint, we're celebrating an English saint in a Greek church, what is there something else we can add here that might associate something new with this saint in a way that's still consistent with everything else we're doing? Like basically, is there, and what I came up with was, is there some sort of sweet bread kind of thing, some sort of sweet pastry that could be associated with Saint Richard? We've got the Vasilopita, right? For Saint Basil, is there something like that you could do here? And so I came up with it, and what I came up with was a kind of braided, fruity sweet bread that was in the shape of a pilgrim staff, because in the saint's life there's a big moment where he's an English king who renounces his throne, takes off his kingly robes, puts on a pauper's cloak, puts away his royal scepter, and picks up a pilgrim staff. So I've got this fruity, braided sweet bread that's in the shape of a pilgrim staff, and so I made 3 of those, brought those along with the Artoclassia loaves, and my priest blessed those at the same time he blessed the Artos loaves.
Sure.
So that's taking something, and this is a very sort of Germanic sweetbread. So it's consistent with it's consistent in a lot of ways with something that you would find in that part of the country. So here is something specific that can stand next to something else that's very specific, Artos loaves, but they don't have to cancel each other out. They don't exclude each other. They can both be there, and having the one actually just enriches the whole experience. That's a very, very specific example and a very personal example. But essentially what I'm saying is a more sort of universal example might be that in Russia for Palm Sunday, they use pussy willows, simply because palms are not native to that part of the world. And so you have churches where you have Greeks and Russians standing side by side on Palm Sunday, waving palm branches as well as pussy willows. There's no reason they can't both be there, right? So does that make sense? Does that help clarify?
Absolutely. It just reflects the beauty of the Orthodox faith, that traditions, as we say with a small t, not dogmas, can be changed or adapted or integrated. I know at our parish, one of the things I loved in the Russian tradition is Easter baskets, the blessing of the Easter baskets. So that's something that we have included in our parish here in Springfield, that Father, you know, blesses Easter baskets. So I really love what you're saying here, and definitely Saint Raphael Brooklyn, as he traveled across the country. I mean, there were many traditions with a small t that were used to, of course, bring about understanding of the faith. And I love that story. I love it. So we have a question. The question is, how can we expose kids to Byzantine music in the United States of America to make the whole Greek Orthodox faith more inclusive to them?
That's a great question.
Yes, it is.
That's a question that is very near and dear to my own heart. I mean, the first thing that we can do is make sure we're welcoming kids to the Analogion. You know, whether that's at Orthros, whether that's at Divine Liturgy, whether that's at Vespers, what have you. You know, there's a culture that I have tried to build at my own parish of, you know, the Analogion is not anybody's personal property, right? It is, you know, and so all are welcome. And this is something that anybody is welcome to learn. This is something that anybody is welcome to participate in. That's one way. Another way is, you know, I think learning things like the Festola Politikia and singing them at home. You know, my kids were at a Panagia parish, and so when it's, you know, when it's the week of Dormition, we're singing the Dormition of Politikion at meal times. During Easter, we're singing Christ is Risen at meal times. At Christmas, we're singing the Christmas of Politikion at meal times, so on and so forth. You know, that takes a little more effort on the part of parents, to be sure. And my kids are, depending on how you look at it, either lucky or cursed to be the cantor's kids, but you know, here we are. I also think that you know, there are an increasing number of accessible educational resources that are out there for Byzantine chanting, in English as well as in Greek. And you know, I have a personal involvement in a number of the English language resources. And I think, you know, we need to make as organized an effort as we can at the parish level to be creating opportunities to use these resources and making them accessible to kids. I had and yeah, I mean, I think those are some of the big ways. You know, we have to welcome kids. We have to, you know, make sure that they are exposed to it passively and actively as much as possible. You know, not just at church, but also at home. And we have to create resources and opportunities for them to learn more. The other thing I would say, and this is the part that's sort of harder, because it requires leadership from kids themselves. You know, one of the sort of challenges I've faced in my own efforts is no kid wants to be the first or the only kid up there. And so if no one is, you have kind of the empty restaurant problem. Nobody goes there because nobody goes there, right? So you have to find ways of making it attractive. You have to find ways of making it something that they want to do, you know, even if it's just one or two at first, because if other kids see that one or two want to do it, then they'll want to do it. peer pressure is very, very powerful. And we have to find ways of using that to our advantage. But, you know, I think active and passive exposure, not just at church, but also at home, is crucial, because, you know, ultimately you want Byzantine chant or whatever church music your parish uses to infuse the hearts and souls of your kids, and that isn't, you know, that isn't going to happen if they hear it sort of once a week.
Right. I like what you said there, because it's very reminiscent of what Saint Raphael himself did. He made things accessible to the youth. He developed night classes that they can come and learn about the faith on a regular basis. He changed and translated things from Arabic to English in order to reach them, to teach them. So all of these components, and ultimately he welcomed them with open arms. And I think, like what you said, the ethos of bringing the children up is just as important as what they were and are learning. Because without that ethos, then it becomes very intimidating. And I agree with the attendee who says, okay, so how can we make this more inclusive? How can we do that? And it's welcoming them with open arms.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions for Richard? Any other questions that may come to mind? While we're waiting on that, I know you're involved with lots of different things, Richard, but you know, can you kind of talk about the digital chant stand and how that's progressed, evolved?
Sure. You know, I haven't been directly involved with it for a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
You know, in 2021, it was acquired by, it became an official ministry owned and operated by the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. And that was when I moved on to Capella Romana. But I mean, the fact that the Archdiocese has given it its full faith and backing, you know, has made a lot of things possible that would not have been possible otherwise.
Right.
You know, the thing that I'm thrilled to see is the way it's being used as a not just a translation platform, but also a platform for missionary and evangelism work in Africa, in Kenya.
Yes.
Parishes in Kenya. My friend Father James Hargrave is very much involved in this. You know, all of basically every parish uses that. It's being used as the place where Orthodox texts or Orthodox worship texts in their own language are being collected and compiled and organized. And I mean, it's proving to be an extraordinarily powerful tool there.
Yes.
And that's and also newly in Spanish as well. So
that's amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah. So those are, you know, those are where I see the sort of true strengths of the platform is in being able to you know, be a place for these languages that are still developing their own traditions,
right?
Their own kind of textual traditions, and giving them a place to flourish and develop and mature. And you know, those two instances in particular, I'm really excited about.
Beautiful. Well, you know,
I can only imagine what Saint Raphael could have done with the digital chant stand.
Truly, right? Or the internet in general.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
Just imagine. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Richard, for your edifying words. I always enjoy hearing the way you look at a topic and kind of turn it inside out, it's very thought-provoking. So I really thank you for that. Before we close, though, I'm going to go ahead and we always close with the Troparion of St. Raphael, Brooklyn, unless you would like to chant it, Richard.
I don't have it. I don't have it quite memorized, so I'll let you guys lead.
Oh, well, I just play it off a recording. So but I do have the music in Western staff notation, not in Byzantine notation. But usually I play the Antiochian Orthodox teenagers who have made the recording, and they've done such a wonderful job. And so let's listen to this.
Rejoice, O Father Raphael, adornment of the Holy Church. Thou art champion of the true faith, seeker of the lost, consolation of the oppressed, Father to orphans and friend of the poor, peacemaker and good shepherd, joy of all the Orthodox, son of Antioch, bolts of America, intercede with Christ God for us, and for all who honor thee.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Richard, again, thank you so much. God bless you. A blessed Thanksgiving to everyone that's coming up, and a blessed Nativity fast. And another lecture will be coming up at the end of the year, Father Porfirio's Memorial Lecture, which happens in May. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, one and all. Have a good night.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you,
everybody.
Presbytera.
Bye-bye.